There's a man. Hey, Tristan, how's it going?
Great, man. It's good to see you. It's been like almost a year since we talked
Yeah,
last.
yeah, I feel like I'm missing out on my Tristan fix, man. Awesome. I like
Yeah,
the I
but
like the background. That's good. So it's still in Ecuador, I assume, correct?
yeah, this is the same room we were in last time. This is like the extent of the furnishing that we've done in the home since I last talked to you. We've been mostly focused on trying to like get the pasture cleared out and get the land producing. So we're still low on furniture. But Jessica, actually, those are woven. What it's called? No, not weaving. Those are oh yeah, they're woven. I always mix up knitting and weaving and all the different things, but Jessica wove those from wool from our sheep actually.
Well, that's totally cool. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
you guys are gonna be, maybe you're gonna be wearing well, it's Ecuador, so you probably don't need a fur coat, but you have your own your own clothes and your own food. And what do you have on the property as far as food right now? I know you got at least one cow and a couple of sheep, and I don't know what else you have. What's the Haggard ranch look like these days?
So right now, okay, here I'm milking 2 cows a day right now, and once finances allow, I'm planning on bringing in at least 2 more milk cows this year. But yeah, so we've got 2 milking cows here. I've got 2 pregnant cows that are on a different property that we rent, and there's 2 cows, 2 calves here, 10 sheep. A bunch of them are pregnant. And we've got about 30 or so chickens, I would say. I'm not sure like the count on the chickens. Between 30 and 40 chickens. And we've got ducks as well. So we have about 22 ducks, 14 of which we discovered are, since they've grown up over the last few months, are drakes. So we're gonna be eating duck for the next few months. Actually,
What?
the drakes drowned one of our laying ducks the other day in the pond. I think what happened, they're very aggressive. Like ducks are really aggressive when they mate. So I think like 3 of the drakes were jumping on top of the female. And yeah, she was the best one as far as eggs go. And they drowned her. So I mean, it's crazy. Like these vegan activists, they're so concerned with animal welfare, but the animals themselves are not very concerned with the welfare of the other animals. Like chickens will peck each other's eyes out. They'll eat each other. If there's a weak
Yeah,
hen, the other hens will surround her, peck her eyes out, and they'll die. And it's funny, you see these vegans, they'll put posts of like hens in these so-called factory farms, which very often are just in a shelter at night, being protected from the elements so that they aren't killed by foxes and wolves and dogs. And they'll show some of these hens and their eyes, they'll have scars on their face and stuff. And they'll act like, oh, these are so neglected, these poor hens. No, that's what they do to each other. They will eat each other alive. Like people are very nice to animals, in my
yeah,
opinion.
but I mean, these animals, they're not thinking. They can't think like humans. They're not sentient. Oh, wait a minute, they are sentient, so we can't eat them. It's kind of a funny, the hypocrisy is there. They'd eat each other, but they're not smart enough. They don't have enough intelligence to not eat each other. But we shouldn't eat them because they're intelligent. I find
Yes.
that funny. Hey,
Well, then also
let's, yeah, go ahead.
the say non-human animals. Like why do you treat non-human animals different than you treat human animals? So they'll say, essentially in their worldview, they're saying that humans and animals are the same. There's nothing to discern that would make it to where you could kill an animal but not a human. But then if you switch that on when you ask them, well, why is it all right for animals to kill animals? 90% of the vegans are going to say, well, because we know better. And then if you ask them, what do you mean we know better? We obviously don't because we've been eating animals for as long as we remember. So it's very kind of double-minded. Doesn't make much
Yeah,
sense to me.
I find I tend not to engage in those arguments with those people because it's you might as well be arguing with a brick wall. It doesn't make a difference. So do you have? I mean, I'm looking at the number of animals you have because I'm just doomsaying about the future here.
Yeah.
How many is that sufficient to feed your family? I mean, how many animals do you need to feed your family complete nutrition? Would you say, do you have more than you need? Are you selling eggs? Are you giving away some of your milk or selling some of your milk?
Yeah.
What's the
So
minimum you need to feed yourself?
I know that in the kitchen right now, there are at least 5 cubetas of eggs. And cubetas, they're these cartons that hold 30 eggs. So we've got an overabundance of eggs. I don't eat very many eggs. Like if I eat too many eggs, my digestion will go off. So I'd
Yeah.
rather trade the eggs, sell the eggs for $9, $10 a cubeta. And then with those eggs, which we'll get about 10 to 15 eggs a day. Every once in a while, we'll pull off like a 19 egg day. So that's about we're getting enough eggs to where if we were to be selling them all, we could easily feed ourselves with meat each day for a family, right? Now, as far as meat goes, we have not butchered any of our cows. We have a calf that was born a year ago, and he's almost big enough to butcher. And if it were a situation where we weren't able to store with refrigeration and freezing, I would say we would probably move towards raising guinea pigs and bunnies for meat, and then using a carbohydrate source that's readily available, like milk, raw milk, and yogurts and cheese. Those store really well. So without modern refrigeration capabilities, that would be a more sustainable way for us to go. But at this moment right now, we are able, all right, so most days, for the first half of the day, my food will look like raw milk and cheese. So I'll cut like a sliver of cheese, which would take each round of cheese that weighs 1 to 2 pounds, takes about 2 gallons of milk. From our 2 cows right now, I'm getting about 12 to 13 liters of milk a day, which is about 3 gallons of milk a day, right? So if we were to just live off of, like, we could survive just off of milk for a significant period of time, at that pace. A gallon of milk a day covers most of your calories if you're not, ShawnBaker sized and ShawnBaker level activity. You're probably going to want some more calories in that case, right? So, but for me, if I were to if it was a starvation situation, I could live off a gallon of milk a day. I'd eat some eggs. We've got some bees and we produce honey as well. So our food production right now can cover and does cover most of the caloric intake of our family. And what we don't cover with that, we can trade eggs and then kind of upgrade the eggs into meat through just barter. Yeah. So,
and how much land does that take, Tristan, that you have?
Right, so we're working on about 15 acres of land right now, and we're in a pretty arid region. It's been drought laden this last year. It's been a very dry year, very windy. So the production isn't maximized. 15 acres of land, we can keep 2 milking cows here on the property year round, rotating it. And once we get better with electric fencing and with planning out the grazing, that'll increase significantly. But I also rent my neighbor's property, and that's another 15 acres. So this year I'm going to have a lot more capacity for milk production and for meat production. So we have 2 calves that we're going to be using for meat, 2 bulls. We own 4 milking cows that will be milked throughout this year. And I'm looking to bring in 2 more. And then we have a calf that will be impregnated within about a year and a half from now. So that's like, longer term, that's more production of food. Yeah. So for us, it's been, we have been focusing on trying to be as self-sustained as possible. And to us, that doesn't mean like, oh, we never buy anything, or like we just live in the middle of nowhere and don't talk to any people. To us, it's really, what's important for us is during these lockdowns and insanity, it seems like, there's no exit plan from the lockdowns. The only way that we're going to exit this continuous lockdown situation without, by the grace of God, some sort of a miracle, would be if enough people stop complying with it. If enough people say, no, we're fed up with this bullshit and we're not going to comply. That's the only exit that we have. We're given the experts that we're told are so scientific are telling us, oh, you got a double mask now. You got to take this vaccine, and it's not going to decrease the transmission of the virus. It's not going to keep you from giving it to other people, and you'll still be able to get the virus, and you still got to social distance and mask up. It's like, it's so schizophrenic, the response that we're seeing, that what we're really focused on now is trying to build up our resources and our ability to produce as much land on this small piece of land, which I said, about 15 acres. And that includes, at the moment, chickens, ducks, which you need a small pond if you're going to have ducks. And I love the duck meat compared to chicken meat. I can't stand chicken meat. It's just like, what do you think about chicken, Shawn?
I don't eat it. I just don't find it appealing anymore, So, and I agree. Duck can be, particularly duck breast, it can be it's almost got a beef-like quality. It's redder. It just tastes more nutritious. Yeah. I would definitely pick duck over chicken any day.
For sure. Rabbit is another one that if you wait long enough, you get them fatty enough, That's significantly better than chicken. And then also guinea
Yeah, and
pigs.
you mentioned the guinea pigs, and that's a bit of a delicacy. I know I had that in Peru where they call it cuy.
Yep.
And so the way I had it, it was prepared. I remember they stuck it in with some potatoes, and it was just laying there with his teeth and claws, and it didn't look appealing when I had it. So and this was many, many years ago when I was down there doing a medical mission, and I was like, I'm not too into this stuff. But I mean, people do eat that quite a bit. And they eat
Yeah.
I don't know,
It's an
where is it? The cake, an acquired taste.
Well, like visibly, it's an acquired taste too, right? It's like if we're used
Yeah.
to like, hey, here's my ribeye steak. This is it. I mean, suddenly you see a big. It's basically looks like a big rat on a stick. That's what a
Yeah.
cuy looks like. The way they prepare it here, it's a rat on a stick. But you know what? It's actually the fat in it is a good quality, and all it eats is grass, right? So it's a monogastric. It's not a ruminant, but you feed it there's about 4 plants here that you just forage locally, and you feed it nothing but that. So I want to actually bring in some guinea pigs, and they're big ones too. Like there's large ones and small ones, and those seem like a much more viable resource than chickens at this point. And I think we're going to have to consider, unfortunately, we do have to consider this onslaught that we're seeing of demonization of livestock, and this is extending to the pandemic has allowed the justification of possible mass testing of people's birds, of their pigs, right? Like we saw a lot, the birds are under lockdown in the UK. People with backyard chickens were forced to put them indoors and quarantine their chickens because they tested for bird flu, right? I mean, it's like I don't know how much faith that we should be putting in any of these PCR exams for any of these influenza viruses, especially like, H5N1 and these so-called bird flu viruses. When you if you were to PCR test a majority of the population during the winter months in humans, in the larynx, they're going to contain significant amounts of coronaviruses. It seems like it's an endemic thing that's part of the virome, just like we have a microbiome. It seems like there's a virome, and who knows? I'm not an expert on bird flu and stuff like that, but I think it's ridiculous that people are allowing their birds to be tested and quarantined by these governments. We saw the mink culls, right, in Denmark. They tested the mink. They said your mink have coronavirus, and we're going to have to kill all the mink. So they destroyed the mink populations in Denmark. They've done a similar thing in Greece. So I do think that that's an unfortunate thing that's happening right now that people got to be aware about. But yeah, you don't see them testing guinea pigs or bunnies, and you can keep guinea pigs and bunnies. They're quieter than chickens. So like if you're in a suburban environment, it might be an option as far as like if you got to get around certain regulations that you couldn't get around with hens or roosters, guinea pigs, bunnies. You might I'm talking like guerrilla farming and these things, and that could be an option. So
Yeah,
yeah. Anyways,
I wonder about that. Let's just kind of go on to current events because you're kind of alluding to that. And I think this is some of the interesting stuff. So Bill Gates is buying up massive amounts of U.S. farmland. I guess right now he's the largest single owner of farmland in the U.S. And I've seen, obviously there's the Bill Gates, the nefarious, evil, evil sort of
like
crazy guy.
Blofeld type character, like
Yeah, and then
Bond.
the other people are saying that, look, he's just buying up land because land is valuable. It's a diversified asset portfolio. It doesn't lose value. Whereas the U.S. dollar, for instance, having assets in cars and U.S. dollars is maybe something that's not going to last. And as the U.S. loses its importance in the world, and as we see this is what I think people want to see around the world. They want to see the U.S. minimize the importance. The U.S. dollar may be phased out. Bitcoin, the Bitcoin guys are obviously saying, yeah, Bitcoin. But I mean, land is something that is inherently valuable. So he's buying up all this land. Now, what he chooses to do with that land, that's the potentially the wild card. We don't know what he's going to do. What are your thoughts on he and others buying up all this property and perhaps what they're going to do with that?
Well, all right. So I think it's important to consider like the investment portfolio of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I mean, this is one of the greatest. This is Bill Gates and his foundation have benefited more than almost anybody else. I mean, considering everything other than like Amazon, Walmart. What we've seen is through this pandemic, which and the last time we talked, I said what we're seeing is more like a soft coup, like a global soft coup, like a slow motion global soft coup. And I think it's become a lot more apparent over the last 10 or 11 months, however long it's been since we spoke, that unfortunately I was correct on that. And I did intentionally understate. And, I mean, depending on the audience that I'm speaking to, I might go a little hard, I might go a little soft, depending if it's on YouTube or to having a private conversation with my friends. I might titrate the intensity of the information. So, I respect that this will probably be on YouTube. So I'm going to try to keep it YouTube friendly for the most part.
So, yeah, okay. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when I'm not gonna like, say anything that I know. I know there's things you could talk about when you get kicked off YouTube. So I'll keep it friendly. I believe that Bill Gates is, his intention is more control. I believe that if you look at the investment portfolio of Bill Gates, it's abundantly clear that he is heavily positioned to benefit greatly off of mass inoculation shot campaigns, heavily benefiting from, and he's admitted this on CNBC. He says that there's something like 1,000% return on investments in shots, especially if you're going to make these mandatory through someone says not on YouTube. Okay, that's good. So I guess
well, we will. This will go on a podcast, Tristan, which will be published to the world. So eventually, okay.
Yeah, no, yeah. So yeah, he's making big money on shots. He's making big money on Beyond Meat. He's heavily invested in lab grown meat. What's come out in the last year as well is he's also investing in artificial lab grown breast milk, right? Lab breast milk. Bill Gates is involved in. Bill Gates also involved in the investment in technological techniques for tracking human movement, for tracking and monitoring human behavior, and rewarding that human behavior using cryptocurrencies, right? So there's a patent, and this was famously talked about in a lot of the conspiracy people were freaking out about this because it was like the patent number was W02000600606. So it was like, 2020-666 was the patent number. And this patent was for a cryptocurrency that would reward people in return for biological function input. So it's like monitoring devices that you would see on an Android device or a Fitbit could be used to monitor your biologicals and reward you with cryptocurrency in return for this. So the possibilities for this type of technology are very alarming, right? I mean, we're talking like, you could strap up or even inject a, an implantable probes that will monitor the heart rate, monitor hormones, you could even monitor somebody's thoughts using cranial EEG devices and reward them with cryptocurrency for proper thought patterns. You could reward people with cryptocurrency. You could strap up a bunch of African slave labor children that are mining cobalt to be put in the new green technology for electric vehicles, or for the methylcobalamin and cyanocobalamin that the vegans are taking as their supplemental B12. You could wire up these poor African children that are working in pit mines and reward them with a global cryptocurrency for their good behavior and for their work, right? So these can be used in a lot of interesting ways. He's also positioned to make huge money off of lab-grown meat, artificial meat. Bill Gates's stated goal for many decades, and the goal of his father as well, William Gates Sr., who was heavily involved in Planned Parenthood, was always tied in with, we talked about this in the HBO podcast, so it was like 2 years ago, the eugenics movement, the idea of decreasing human populations, selectively breeding people in order to get what they consider like the superior germplasm, which is, of course, themselves. They believe themselves to be better than us lowly plebs. But his stated goal has always been depopulation, right? So when you look at the work of his foundation, what are they most concerned with? Decreasing population growth in what they call developing countries, especially Africa and Asia. Now, Bill Gates, of course, he's also very concerned with equality, and he wants to make sure that Africans and African Americans get those healthy, happy shots first, right? These experimental mRNA shots. He wants them to have it first because he says he wants equality, and he's really concerned with racial justice. Remember, this is the same guy that said publicly that the biggest problem he sees in the world is the population explosion in Africa. So on one hand, he's saying biggest population is too many Africans are breeding. On the other hand, he says, I'm going to help you with medicine. And this is going to also, he says, this will also help decrease the population because as we educate women, as we Educating women means, they're training them to be debt slaves and to actually join the workforce so that they are less likely to breed because they're out there competing with men in the workplace. And in third world countries, this is a big goal, they call it gender equality, but it's not about equality. It's about creating a tax base, and it's really about social control. So Bill Gates is very concerned with social control. He's very concerned with decreasing human population. He's very concerned with controlling the food supply as well, which is why since 2010, he's been one of the biggest shareholders in Monsanto. So I think you could take this mosaic that I kind of just painted of the major investments and kind of the worldview of Bill Gates. And when you look at him buying up all the farmland, to me, it's very alarming. To me, it seems right in line with the Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals desire to set apart at least, and they're saying minimum, 30% of the land for what they call like rewilding. Basically, they mean getting people off of that land and creating what they call nature reserves, using ecosystem services, which is basically like Leonardo DiCaprio and Bill Gates get to buy a bunch of land, and then we get to pay carbon taxes, and that goes to their land, and they get carbon credits by owning land and keeping people off of it. And then there's a lot of scams that these foundations are involved in. And what it does come down to is the control of resources, the control of food, the control of minerals, mined minerals, especially things like gold, silver, cobalt, lithium. These are all these all play into, they're very important for what they call the fourth industrial revolution, which is essentially it's a remarketing. It's a marketing of further consolidation of all industrial technology into a global system that's managed at a global level through a technocracy of tracking, tracing, and controlling human movement and the movement of all resources. The fourth industrial revolution requires tons of cobalt. It requires tons of lithium because it's all about automation. It's all about connectivity, right? Ubiquitous internet connections. Your toilet's going to be a smart toilet. It's going to weigh how much poop you have in it. It's going to tell if you were a naughty little global citizen and ate too much protein that week, or if you didn't take your mandatory psychotropic drugs. This is literally what these people are planning, and they put this stuff in stimulus bills, right? Like the coronavirus stimulus bill had. Why would the coronavirus stimulus bill that was proposed, and Senator Rand Paul kind of exposed this, why would it give money to researching smart toilets and researching psychological experiments, seeing if they could influence people to eat bugs? Well, that's because the major thinkers behind this, like Bill Gates, like guys like Klaus Schwab, who wrote the book COVID-19, The Great Reset, these people are very keen on implementing a total control grid, which they call the fourth industrial revolution, so that everything is tracked, everything is quantified, and ultimately everything is rationed to us by AI, which is basically just a new marketing term for computer algorithms, and a group of unelected technocrats, billionaire philanthropists, bankers, and essentially genocidal maniacs who want control of us. And that's kind of my short/long answer to why Bill Gates wants the farmland. He wants us dead or completely enslaved. And it sounds crazy, but I think the last year has really vindicated a lot of the crazy shit that I've been saying for the last few years. And I wish I was wrong. I wish it was not this way, but I do think that we're moving towards more of it's like Blade Runner 2049 meets the Hunger Games, meets Brave New World on acid, with a satanic AI fake, demonic god being worshipped as the savior of humanity. That's really like what I see this moving towards. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen. It doesn't mean that I believe that this is where we're ultimately going to be led, but that is the plan that is openly stated by these people. And it's very dehumanizing. It's very alarming. It's difficult to even talk about with many people. But I think if we take it in baby steps when we're talking to friends and family, and if people understand, just some of the basic things that some people like Bill Gates have stated, like, we can decrease the human population by 10 or 15% if we do really well with shots and inoculations. What does he mean by that? Decrease the population 10 to 15% if we give enough people shots and inoculations that you claim are going to save their lives. There's a double-mindedness that I think is being programmed in the population, where it's people believe that these billionaires and philanthropists are they're just that. Like they're these great saviors of humanity. They're just these like humanist demigods who, by the divine right of evolutionary kings, have gotten control of enough resources, and they're going to guide humanity into this future where we live forever if we just like, you know, get the right injections and eat the kibble and give our land up. But really what these people are just lost, traumatized people. And yeah, I think what we're looking at with a lot of these elite are just sick psychopaths who are seeking more power in a worldly sense. And this is very dangerous. So yeah, screw Bill Gates.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and many people have seen this clip from the WF from a couple of years ago, where one of the catchphrases was, "You will own nothing and you will be happy about it." So if I own nothing, who owns it all? I mean, they own it all, right? I mean, is that what the plan is there?
Stakeholder capitalism is what they call it. So, and they're basically they're rebranding. And these are pragmatists. So a lot of people are like, oh, these are communists. They're commies, right? Or these are capitalists, right? The leftist critique will be, this is monopoly capitalists, and the right wing will say these are crazy commies, right? And but no, really the ideology of the elite. If you read a book, like I would highly suggest, if anybody wants to see how these people think, get a copy of The Scientific Outlook by Bertrand Russell. This is a really good book. It's a short book, and it's a great book for understanding the worldview of people like Bill Gates, of people like Klaus Schwab. These are pragmatists, right? They take bits and pieces of whatever ideology will get them to their ultimate goal, which usually is just raw power. So it's not communism that's coming. It's not fascism. It's the worst aspects of these slammed together in this dialectical tension. And the outcome would be, if it's allowed, and if enough people don't see what's coming, pushback, or if we don't have, divine intervention, the outcome will be the worst aspects of communism, right? You own nothing at the bottom. The worst aspects of capitalism and fascism, which is, they're calling it stakeholder capitalism, which means the stakeholders, not the stakes like we like, right? But the stakes like they hold the stakes. Those who are going to hold the stakes are going to be Bill Gates, World Economic Forum, Monsanto, Chevron, BP, Goldman Sachs, the IMF, the World Bank, all these organizations, corporations, Lockheed Martin, Dow, right? Pfizer, right? These corporations that have been involved in genocides, that have funded genocides, that have done human experimentation, that have destroyed the environment, they're going to sell this to us as this is to save the planet. But really, who's going to own everything is going to be them. It's going to be the World Economic Forum member groups. It's going to be Klaus Schwab and these people. Klaus Schwab wrote a book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution. And this is another book, if anybody is interested in understanding where this is going. This is a book that was published, I think, 4 years ago. It might have been 2016. I can't find the page, but that's a good one for understanding this as well. And then he also published a book that I threw up earlier, COVID-19, The Great Reset. And the Great Reset is the new keyword for what's being implemented. They see this crisis as an opportunity to fast track agendas that would have never been able to be accepted by the general populace. I mean, 2 years ago, I'm talking to you on HPO podcast about, Greta Thunberg. Everyone's mocking Greta Thunberg 2 years ago. How dare you? We have to do something. The earth is dying. The planet is dying, and only if we can only pay more taxes, the weather will stop changing. Everyone's laughing about that 2 years ago, but that was the model. What they wanted to declare a climate emergency, right? That was the goal. Declare a climate emergency. The Extinction Rebellion said all the governments have to declare an emergency for the climate. And we have to then implement, we have to take action now, climate action now. And of course, these are vague PR firm terms that are, given to them by just that, by PR firms, right? These are not like, there's never a, just like there's no end point for leaving the COVID crisis, the climate crisis is the same. There's no real measure of like, oh, here we go, we beat climate change. There's no more change in the climate anymore. That's intentional. And the enemy is vague intentionally. And there's not meant to be an end to these wars. Just like the drug war, it's unwinnable, right? You can't win the drug war. The war on terror, it's unwinnable because the definition of terror is constantly changing. The war on the virus, it's unwinnable. You have some countries saying that we need zero COVID. That's impossible. If you're using a PCR exam, there's going to be seasonality to positive results on that. And if you run enough cycles, everyone could be positive. So it's like the idea of an undefeatable enemy that the whole global population has to come together in this, humanist, global, totalitarian world order in order to fight against the invisible enemy that's unwinnable. This is a concept that's been used upon by people like H.G. Wells, who wrote the book New World Order over 100 years ago, or no, nearly 100 years ago. He also wrote a book called The Open Conspiracy, which is another book. He wrote several nonfiction books. These are not fiction, like, the Time Machine and this other stuff. They were nonfiction books about a global revolution, what he called the Open Conspiracy, that anybody can join, right? That actually melds together a lot of these, the driving force is the idea of like humanism, man is the center of the universe, our will being the uniting force that can then subject the rest of humanity in order to fight these invisible enemies like war, right? Global war, terrorism, climate changing, and all this. The idea of an invisible enemy that's undefeatable to unite the people against is a common thread throughout the thinking of the economic and even kind of like occult circles in the elite for generations, actually for several hundred years. This has been an idea and an ideal in order to unite the people. So yeah, it's not about saving the planet. When they say you will own nothing, they mean that. And when they say that you will be happy, they mean that also, but they mean you'll be forced to be happy because you'll take your happy pills. And if you're not happy, then you're gonna, you can join the carousel like in Logan's Run, right? You're 33 years old, you hit the carousel and you're out, right? So if you're not happy, hey, too bad. You don't take the shot, no job, right? You don't jump through the next hoop, you get no universal basic income. And yeah, it's alarming. It sucks. I don't think they're going to be ultimately successful. I think there are a lot of people that are pushing back, but there's huge censorship now. We've seen that last year. But yeah, man. I mean, it's been cool watching like your Instagram feed and stuff. I always, I'm always following your Instagram and seeing what you're doing. And there are people, like you who are pushing back against this and who seem to see things, at least to a certain extent, in a similar light that I'm seeing them. You might not be as crazy as me, but I see you talking about the bugs. I see you're not going to be eating the bugs or owning nothing.
Well, you got to walk a little bit of line because we know that it's a flip of the switch and you're silenced basically. So there's that. Now, this is something that, you probably have seen, the UK is proposing, I don't know if it's going to get through, 40% tax on meat. And that's disturbing enough, but what I saw today was a guy, it might've been on BBC. It was or some kind of radio station in the UK. And they were talking about, I think it was a CBI was proposing that taxing doesn't make sense, but rationing is more equitable. So we're going to ration meat. And that's sad enough too. But the other thing they said, and this was subtle, but he said the coronavirus / climate change emergency, as if they are blending the two together. We've already got people primed and worried and freaked out about coronavirus. What can I do? What can I do to prevent it? How do I save grandmother? And they just like nicely just wedge climate change in there as if it's the same thing. And I think that is probably the disturbing part, because you get these people, we see how many people who are, screaming at people for not wearing masks. I mean, there are people walking around spraying the air with squirt bottles. I mean, they become psychotic about this stuff. And I mean, whether you think masks work or not, it's besides the point. There are people that are energized in a very psychotic way, in my view. And now you're just saying, okay, now climate change. Let's just convert these people into climate change fighters. And so we're going to be, like you said, swabbing your chickens for coronavirus. We're going to be rationing. Did you eat more than your one burger a week, which is the World Economic Forum recommends, one burger patty a week and 2 eggs and a cup of milk a day? Did you eat more than that? So this is, what are your thoughts on this meat rationing? Yeah.
I hate to say I told you so, but remember we did the HBO podcast a couple of years ago. I talked about the climate crisis rhetoric really is all about control. It's all about technocracy. And I said in the very beginning, and I mentioned this in the last time we talked here as well, Meet RX, they will fuse the two ideas, climate change, the virus, and they're going to become one. Because look, the solution, no matter what the crisis is nowadays, the solution is always the same. Guess what the solution is? World government rationing everything to the plebs, control of breeding, control of human movement, and control of all resources. Oh, what a surprise, right? So no matter what happens, if Bill Gates stubs his toe, if whatever happens, the solution has got to be, it's always the same, and that's because the solution is prepackaged. So yeah, this is coming. They're also blaming, right? So part of the dialogue in the beginning was bat soup created this, like, oh, it's all because of the bats. These Chinese people are eating animals, and the zoonotic diseases are from eating animals, and that's because of overpopulation, right? So some of the like central dogmas of the elite in these transnational corporations, NGOs, banking, is the idea of overpopulation, this Malthusian idea of there's too many people, we're going to run out of resources, and everything in the world, all the problems in the world are just created by there being too many people. Prince Philip says the same thing. This woman asked him, you stated that you believe that overpopulation is, or what is the biggest problem in the world? And he like laughed, overpopulation. From our perspective, there's really nothing else. And she goes, well, what do you want to do about this? What do you propose we do about this? And Prince Philip says, can't you guess? Can't you guess? And she's like, oh, I don't know, maybe I forget what her answer was, but it's like this demonic glee that these people have when they talk about the problem in the world. It always comes down to there's just too many people, the useless eaters. The problem of overpopulation. And he also says, there's a speech, and I put it in some of these videos I edited a while back, where Prince Philip's giving a presentation about some great philanthropist who sterilized a bunch of farmers in these Asian countries. And he's like, oh yes, he told me it was amazing. It was like a one-man show. He was going about, and it was like Johnny Appleseed with sterilization, convincing all these farmers to not have any children. He told them, look, it's fine, you have one or two children. But after that, if you want to keep entertaining yourself, get a vasectomy. And he convinces the people to get a vasectomy. And I asked him, how did you convince them to do this, right? Because he knows it's dehumanizing. He's like, well, they didn't want to be seen getting the vasectomies, so we wanted to make sure that they didn't see it, and I just envisioned them being in like these little boxes, and no, I just blindfolded them. And then the whole audience like giggles and laughs, like, oh, and he laughs, oh, yes, we blindfolded these plebs and we cut off their genitals. It's really sick the way these people think. And this is who's pushing the idea of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the so-called Great Reset. It's Prince Charles, the royal family, the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates. Now we've got Trudeau, we've got Joe Biden. Joe Biden's website, his transition website was called Build Back Better. You've got Boris Johnson saying Build Back Better. You see all the calling cards of the COVID-19 Great Reset, Fourth Industrial Revolution proposed by the World Economic Forum being repeated by these politicians. And now Boris Johnson, who came in, was voted in as a so-called conservative, right? And, supposedly going to kind of push against the overreaching of the more like liberal party. And he does a complete 180. And now he's talking about, we got to build back better to stop climate change. We can't just go back to the old normal, because the old normal was killing Mother Earth, right? You owning cars, you like eating meat, that's all bad. We got to tax your meat. We got to tax your milk. And the roll in of this was done through coercion, through terror, and through fear, right? We were all freaked out. We saw videos of people dropping dead in China. We saw the videos of Chinese guys like in spacesuits, like in ET, and they're spraying things down. They're welding people into their apartments. So we're like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Like, good God, we might die. Let's protect ourselves. They get us into the lockdowns. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? And here we are a year later. Is the curve flat yet? I mean, we there's no exit point, yeah. And so now the point that they're going towards is shifting the conversation putting in more of this environmentalism stuff, build back better, green technology. By green technology, it's not really green, right? They're going to say, oh, we're going to get off of petrol, we're going to get off of hydrocarbons, we're not going to be burning oil and gas. They're talking about, cobalt mined batteries and lithium mined batteries that, you've got coup d'etats in Bolivia in order to get control of these resources. You've got African slave labor being used to mine the pieces for these batteries. It's more environmental devastation to build a Tesla than it is to fix up an old 1970s and 80s Chevy truck that's sitting in a landfill because nobody was educated on how to maintain them. We're looking at not a movement to save the world, but a movement to save profit and control and to consolidate it. And the climate crisis is what this is really all about. Nobody could be convinced about the climate crisis. Nobody believed that their house was on fire. No matter how much propaganda, no matter how many little kids they put in front of you, and no matter how many times the UN used the human shield to say, oh, we've got to take all your resources and reallocate the world's resources to save us from the climate, people weren't buying it. But we were terrorized into submission using COVID, and now it's the propaganda campaign to reopen slowly in a controlled economy. I mean, the Bolsheviks this is like the Bolsheviks' wet dream. They had to kill millions of people with a bloody terror campaign in order to shut down the economy in Russia. They had to completely bring society to a halt in the French Revolution through guillotines, mass death, and depopulation campaigns. Here, all it's taken was some simple mass media propaganda, and we've had a total shutdown of the global economy, and now a centrally planned global economy is coming into fruition, and that's the goal. So we need to push back.
And let's talk about the pushback, because this is the one thing, people, I mean, obviously there's a lot of people talk about Nazi Germany and the brown shirts and the snitches and the tell on your neighbor and, out people. And you wonder, I'm just following orders, and you see police and I see Germany with the Corona patrol force chasing a guy on a ski resort because he was skiing without a mask on. I think it's just insane. But then there's like sheriffs in the California say, hey, we're not going to enforce these stupid mask mandates. But what I see, and I applaud those guys that are doing it, because you're like, as a cop, I mean, you got to have some common sense. But what I see is, they replace those cops. They recruit people that are willing to enforce those laws, or even worse, they use technology. So we have drones that are surveillance drones. And then we have, and it's coming. We've got these robots, these people that are going to be augmented with robot technology. They're going to walk around in super suits. They're going to be, doesn't matter how strong. You could be the kid that was picked on. I don't know. I haven't read that. Maybe that's in there. But I mean, you've got, you can just augment a force of people that are indestructible. It doesn't matter how strong and fit and athletic you are. Some little nerd with a drone in his bedroom is going to be, picking you up and slamming you around and making you comply. I mean, it's like I've got friends that have worked in the military as drone officers. I mean, and they're in there literally killing people from outer space. And they're sitting in a control center. So, I mean, how do you push back when that is probably coming? I can imagine. I was almost going to do an Instagram post and make up the global elite defense force. Your requirements are no physical requirements, just some level of sadism, and you get to shock people with 50,000 volts if they have sex with a human, and if they have sex without a mask on, it's 20,000 votes or some craziness. You can see this scenario playing out. So, how do you? I mean, can we avoid that? Can we push back? How do we push back?
Yeah, well, obviously, I wish there was an easy answer. Everything you just expressed, I think, man, and that's the zeitgeist. That's kind of where the spirit of the age is leading us. And I held up the book, Fourth Industrial Revolution. That's what it's about. Part of the Fourth Industrial Revolution is augmentation, transhumanism. Ultimately, not just like having everybody on their iPads always communicating through surveillance devices, but also you're going to become the iPad. They want you to become a military hardware consumer electronic device. They literally want us to, and they've already got a lot of people worshiping these things. So I do think that ultimately what we're looking at is not an intellectual battle. Ultimately, what we're looking at is not a physical battle for resources. Ultimately, I do think that this comes down to a spiritual battle. I think that what this does come down to is the worldview that we hold is what drives us to behave in the way that we behave. So I do not see a worldly utopia in our worldview coming from our family is Orthodox Christian. We're Eastern Orthodox, And we're coming from a worldview where we don't believe that there is a worldly utopia that is going to save us in like a humanistic sense. We don't believe that there is going to be a global leader that will come through. Like, we're not going to get like, God Emperor Donald Trump is not going to like, come back with the US Space Force and then and give us all like the life extension technology, and we're all going to live forever and everyone's going to be happy. Like, if we don't even believe that if enough people realize that there's all these bad things going on in the world, that's enough to stop this. Really, the position I'm coming from is, I think what we're dealing with is, it's a spiritual battle. It's a spiritual battle. But that doesn't mean that we can't stop this. That doesn't mean that this cannot be stopped, and that we can't slow this down at least. So I think some practical things that we can do to slow down the spread of this virus is, first of all, having real, honest conversations with our friends and families, right? We can't sit back and we can't get black-pilled and just think, oh, this is all inevitable. The world sucks. I can't do anything. No, we do have to push back. We got to stand up for what's true. We got to stand up for what's right. Yeah. So I think having real conversations with our family, building real local communities, right? Building real local communities where we've got, food distribution networks locally. Yeah. Like supporting local producers of food, supporting local family farms, getting involved in producing our own food, right? Having plans with our friends and family in case of certain emergencies, right? I mean, you've got earthquake plans if you live in California. You've got fire evacuation plans if you're living in California. Maybe extending those plans to include the greater neighborhood. Maybe, building networks of like-minded people locally to where we can have plans in place in case of, civil unrest in our area, for instance, which could be triggered at the flick of a switch by the media. We've seen that in the last year as well. I think that's important. Yeah. I think creating real communities, right? Maybe even moving out. Like if you live in San Francisco or Los Angeles, for instance, and you feel a draw to change the area you live in, taking the steps and doing it before more lockdowns and more madness and terror campaigns come. Yeah. So I think getting rid of that fear, not being afraid. I mean, look, we're all going to die. The way that these people have been able to terrorize us so much the last year especially, is the threat of death. Like, you're going to die, but if you do this, maybe you won't die. If you listen to the science, maybe you won't die. If you just give up all your resources, maybe the weather won't change, right? If you sacrifice the virgin on the volcano, then your crops are going to grow. It's this fear that has driven us into this state of like just paralysis. So we got to get beyond the fear. Hey, we're all going to die, right? I mean, it's our choice what we do with this life that we have. It's our choice. Ultimately, we believe that it's our choice what we do with the ability to deny or reject eternal life and connection to the truth, which we believe that the truth doesn't come from, Bill Gates. The truth doesn't come from the tip of a gun. The truth doesn't come from like might makes right, social Darwinism. We believe the truth comes from God. So ultimately, I think that, if there's this quote from a recent saint, one of the modern saints in Orthodoxy, Saint Paisios, and he said, if I didn't know that ultimately this is all in God's hands, this world would drive me completely insane. And to me, it's like that, knowing what I know, seeing the things I've seen in my life, experiencing my own shortcomings, experiencing my own ability to be, to do all these things that, a lot of these global elite are doing, right? To seek power, to seek domination, to seek your own glory. Like I having felt these things in myself, I know I'm capable of genocide. I know I'm capable of horrible things, and I know we all are. But I think it's our choices, our own individual choices, where we align our heart, where we align our resources and our intentions. And I don't think that I don't think violent resolution ever results in a better situation for more people. It just creates more trauma, more terror. But that doesn't mean that I don't think war is never justified. That doesn't mean that I think that self-defense is never justified. So I think what we need to do is create communities, real communities, focus on building real networks of barter and trade, and learn real skills. And real skills are not taking cool selfies. Real skills are not selling your ass on OnlyFans. Real skills are being able to, produce for your family, being able to, repair things, right? Being able to put together a motor, being able to suture a wound, being able to nurse a child back from illness. These are real skills, and these are the real human interactions that we need to be focusing on, are what we're being robbed of. So people got to look people in the eyes. We got to take the masks off. We got to stop letting ourselves be dehumanized and stop being afraid. And then, I think each one of us is going to have we all got different paths. There's different things that I can do in my community. It's going to look different than what you can do, right? You got different skills than I have. And we're all going to have to kind of employ those skills in an intelligent way and in a measured way in order to stop this. So that might mean for some people spreading the word and speaking up. For others, that might mean, stop being a drunk and a degenerate. For others, that might be getting rid of your pornography addiction or something. It's like some of us are so trapped in our own like little prisons that how the heck are we going to help anybody in the first place, right? So really it comes down to us changing ourselves, our own hearts, and then the world follows after. Like, I'm not going to go change the world if I'm, completely trapped in illusion and delusion myself. So it starts with us, and then it kind of radiates out. And I think we can stop this. I don't think it has to go to like Terminator Salvation or whatever that movie was, when it's like one of those recent Terminators where it's all gone to shit. I hope it doesn't go there. But I can see where people can get like black pilled and think it's bleak. But ultimately, look, the salvation isn't coming from Bill Gates. Salvation's not coming from some, great peasant revolt. If we just kill all the elite and eat the rich, all that just results in more war, more devastation. So yeah, we got to take one step at a time.
How do we, I think one of the biggest impediments, to people being willing to make change, and, you see this, we see starving masses, they rise up, they revolt. We don't have starving masses. We have a bunch of people that are overfed and complacent and comfortable. How do you get past that inertia of comfort to actually do something? Because I think, most people, they're like, hey, I got my Netflix, I got my donuts, I'm good. So, I mean, how do we break past that sort of mentality?
That's a really good question. I mean, a lot of the questions you ask me, like, I wish maybe I'll have you on my show sometime soon. I can because, I start babbling and, I know I'm here to, spread my stuff, but man, a lot of the times I want to hear what you think. But I think you're absolutely right, man. Like that, there's a meme that's been going around for the last couple of years about, was it hard times make good men, easy times make weak men. I forget what the last one was. You know how it goes? How's it go?
Yeah, it's like, hard times make hard men, and then good times make weak men, and weak men make hard times, or something like that. It's just a vicious cycle, yeah, basically.
Right. So I think it's one of those things. It's like that's why I do really see this more as a spiritual battle, right? And how do we get out of that? Is we've got to have examples of like what real men do. Women have to have examples of what real women do, and this is part of the psychological warfare that's been going on. So men's example for like what it is to be a real man is like, effeminate Bill Gates dressed up like Mr. Rogers, talking like Blofeld from James Bond movie about how he wants to decrease the population. Oh, if we just come flatten the curve on all the population growth in Africa, then we can just like go ahead and get the numbers down on all the little babies being born, and we can do that if we have enough vaccines and GMOs. Then we can flatten all the curves on all the women so they'll be infertile. It's like these are examples. Other examples for men are just like, straight up cartoon characters, right? Like we're given this new mythology, like this new kind of iconography of, you got the Joker film, and the Joker is just, it's all about basically the Joker film. The way I see it, it's like a blueprint for color revolutions, where it perpetuates the cycle. It perpetuates the cycle of greed and envy, and the images we see in television, the images we see for women, it's like Cardi B like slapping the WAP on the ground, like grab the mop. It's just disgusting. It's like demonic iconography, right? It's pornographic. It's about greed. It's about flexing on people. It's about animal level dominance. And it's like, we take that in and we internalize it. Yeah. So we've been raised very much so. My generation was raised by pop culture. So I think disconnecting from pop culture for at least a long enough time to actually get a clear head is really important, right? So like, I mean, this is part of the reason why we became Orthodox, is reading the lives of the saints. Like we do have examples in the modern times of people who have, risen up to the occasion and shucked off the slave and being enslaved to the passions, and these, guys like, that I've been inspired by, with, guys like St. John of Shanghai and San Francisco, who was a Russian that had to leave during the revolution, brought lots of Russians to China. Ended up, the communists came to China after that, right? This guy's an ascetic. Like, he lived a life of renouncing the passions, of renouncing bodily pleasure, of prayer and fasting. And actually, he went around and pulled babies out of dumpsters in Shanghai in the 1930s, when they were just treating these babies like trash, literally pulling babies out of dumpsters. He adopted hundreds to father to. And then when the communists came, he's got a flock of Russians and
I think Tristan, Tristan looks like he's froze up to me. Is anybody else saying that? Yeah.
And just the life that he led was so selfish. This dude would never sleep. He would stay up all night praying. He would doze off in the middle of conversations with people and wake up, and he heard everything they said, and he would give them advice. Like, this guy he would visit people. He would visit the sick in the night, and they didn't even realize that they didn't even know him, and he would show up and bless them, and then they would recover. Like, there's so many miracles attributed to this guy. And it wasn't just through, like, he didn't do this in a way of like seeking his own glory. He wanted to genuinely help people. So to me, it's like guys like, St. John of San Francisco and Shanghai, guys like Father Seraphim Rose, like, they've been a real influence on me of how can I live? Like, I'm not going to save the world by pushing my will upon it. Right. I think we really have to seek a higher will, and we have to seek disconnection from the stimulus that is destroying our culture, that's destroying our families, right? And we need to be able to have good fathers in our lives. Like, we got to be fathers to our children, right? Like, we got to raise our own kids. If you think you're gonna go out there and save the planet and by, like, whatever, spark a revolution or something by just raging against the machine, and then your kids are addicted to porn and they watch Netflix all day, like, you're just a dead flopping fish, right? Your fruits are out there rotting while you're trying to spew dead pond water all over the world, not realizing that you're in a shitty tepid water pond. So I think we gotta start with ourselves. We gotta disconnect from the evils of the world, really. And I think that a lot of the examples in my life are coming from the lives of saints and guys like St. John of Shanghai and San Francisco, Father Seraphim Rose, Saint Seraphim of Sarov. There are many examples that have provided me with a greater understanding, and then, of course, they are all following Christ. They're all following Jesus. That's ultimately what we believe is the salvation for us. Is we're not going to find like a worldly utopia. We're looking towards the next life, and that does sometimes involve renouncing things that might even make us comfortable, right? Like what other people think about us, like whatever people say about us. We got to stop caring about that and care more about what we know in our heart, right? And whether you believe in God or not, if you're worshiping the opinions of your neighbors, if you're just concerned with your neighbor thinking you're cool, with wearing the right clothes, with believing the trendy things so that you don't get criticized by your coworkers, how alive are you? Yeah, so I think that's what it comes down to. We got to change ourselves.
How much do you think, because I'm just going to be, I think, realistic. I don't think greed is going anywhere. I don't think massively financially successful corporations are going to go anywhere. I think that's it. So how can we influence those guys in a way that's sort of mutually beneficial? And I see this with, market dictating where resources are allocated. And so with the sort of the food thing, I'm saying if enough people say, hey, look, we want meat and we'd like, meat raised in a certain way, can we influence the market? I know I talked to Gabe Brown, I'm sure you know who Gabe Brown is, but he says he's negotiating with Tyson Foods, or it might've been Carl. He wasn't going to tell me the exact one, but I know it's one of those two, to invest heavily in regenerative agriculture. And so I think that is one way, other than getting your own house in order and your family in order, but how do we, influence these guys to say, we want to make, because at the end of the day, they just want to make money is my thought. Now I know some of the stuff about power and eugenics. I don't really get the motivation for that. You know, if you just have a lot of money, you can do nice things and whatever. I don't really get the, I want to kill the world. I want to depopulate the world, but let's just assume there are greedy people out there that want to make a lot of money. I don't think that's a stretch. Do you think we can use that to our advantage?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, on the local level, it is like that. I mean, just to push back a little bit on the idea of, you know, greed being the ultimate driving force behind it, there is a certain level, we all know, it's like if you can print money, you know, then there you see it a little bit differently, right? Like if you got the ability to flex through the Federal Reserve and create stimulus money and print it out of nothing, there's kind of another level there. But yeah, I do think that there is at the corporate level, profits matter. But again, it's hard for me to put too much. It's hard for me to put too much faith in there being a major change there, because when you read Klaus Schwab's book, The Great Reset, and when you see what they want to do with what they call stakeholder capitalism, the new economic system that they want to create, they say it's not about greed, right? It's not about GDP. So when this new system comes through, it's not going to be about GDP. It's going to be about what they call well-being, right? Well-being is going to be the new GDP. Who measures well-being? Well, it's AI, right? It's computer algorithms, right? You have well-being if your serotonin or dopamine levels are this, and we'll also factor in, you know, if you'll be rationed this amount of stuff. So yeah, I think for sure, like within the system we have now, not considering the new financial and economic model that is being rolled out, which is based on social credits, that's already been beta tested in China by big tech. If you're looking at GDP, if you're looking at economic growth, for sure, you could influence people to make intelligent decisions like support regenerative agriculture, support local food, right? I mean, just at a pragmatic level, it's like, hey, if there's a lockdown again, you really think that importing Chinese Beyond Burgers made from pea protein isolate that was from peas grown in Canada is going to be able to feed the world? Like that's the practical level. So yeah, I think we can influence through our dollars, through what we use our money for. And we saw that with like the GameStop stuff with like, you know, Reddit influencing major swings in the stock market. You see, you know, cryptocurrencies becoming more popular and stuff like that. So there's a lot of ability there to sway it. And I do think, yeah, we can push back economically by deciding where we put our money, by deciding who we're going to support. But also, I think we need at a practical level, we need organized resistance against the Great Reset, against stakeholder capitalism, against the World Economic Forum. And that's not been manifesting at all. And that's intentionally, right? The best, I think Stalin was attributed the quote, the best way to destroy your opposition is to lead your opposition. So what we need to do is we actually do need organized resistance and push back against this. We need people to realize the calling cards of Build Back Better, the Great Reset, the You Will Own Nothing video that went viral. That was big. World Economic Forum had to pull that down from Twitter. They changed the title of the article on their website, right? Just to try to save face. But it's still up on Forbes under the same title if anybody wants to share that with their friends and family. You will own nothing. I own nothing. I have no privacy and I've never been, and I'm happy. It's like the article. You can look that up on Forbes and it's still there until they figure that out and change it. So yeah, we can make decisions. I think we need to hold criminals accountable as well. We have legal framework, right? You saw in, was it Portugal? The courts decided that the PCR exam was absolutely fraudulent and cannot be used to diagnose this virus. So we need to, we got to push back against the PR firm buzzwords. People have to become aware of what's going on, and we should have organized resistance against this new system being implemented. Now, what the people that are organizing this new system are banking on is there being no organized resistance. There being a fractured and afraid and just basically mentally ill population who's watching Cardi B, who are, you know, trying to make ends meet by selling pictures of their ding dong on OnlyFans. That's what they're banking on, right? So we need intelligent people like you. We need intelligent people like everybody in Meet RX here and everybody who later hears this to be having conversations, to be possibly bringing litigation against the fraud that we see, right? Bringing litigation against the people pushing the PCRs and bringing, you know, we need legal recourse for people like Bill Gates, right? We need legal recourse for these senators who sold off all their stock right before the economy crashed because they had meetings in January before all the restrictions and the COVID stuff was announced. We got to hold them accountable, and there are legal frameworks to do that, right? So we need lawyers, we need intelligent people with a platform like you. We need we need people with bigger platforms like Oprah. No, I'm just kidding. She's not gonna do shit. We need people like Joe Rogan. Like if they could speak up about this stuff, and which some of them have. Russell Brand has talked about the COVID-19, the Great Reset, and he's notoriously very left wing. And a lot of the left understand what's going on. A lot of people on the right understand what's going on, but they've been mashed in this fake dialectical tension where they want to beat each other up in the streets about staged elections rather than push back against the Great Reset, push back against PCR fraud, push back against mandatory medical treatments, concentration camps, medical concentration camps, and all this. Like a lot of the stuff that's happening, it's unconstitutional. And yes, the courts are notoriously corrupt, but exposing that is important as well. And then maybe you could bring litigation in order to, to change that. So I think we got to work within the legal framework we have now, rather than just sit back and say, hey, there's nothing we can do, right? Like, yes, we got to change our hearts. We got to align ourselves in a way to where we can do something effectively. But then we take steps in the real world within the legal framework, legally, like burning down things is not going to help. That only gives justification for further clampdowns, further totalitarian measures. We need intelligent, measured discourse, response, and legal recourse against the criminals doing this. So yeah, thanks for bringing it back to the practical. There are secular ways we can push back against this. It doesn't, we don't have to all, live this ascetic life and try to renounce all the worldly things. A lot of us, that's going to be part of it for a lot of us. And it's the most important thing to get our hearts right and to align our lives with the truth. But then, we take legal framework. We don't just sit back. You're not going to meditate it away. You're not going to play video games all day and maybe make a few complaining posts on Facebook and to change the world. We got to do stuff legally.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to close this out, Tristan. And I think more to come, obviously. And thank you. I mean, I know a lot of people probably hadn't heard you before and pretty interested. So let folks know where they can find more, because I know you talk about this stuff all the time, every day, all day long, and you've got a lot of great content. So let folks know where to find you.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody in MeetRx. It's cool. I've been kind of watching the chat scroll by, and it's a little bit different than last time I came on. I know last time I came on, there were a few people who were like, man, this guy's kind of full of shit. Hey, I understand it, but I think the last year has really opened a lot of people's eyes, opened up their hearts, opened up their minds. The last year has broken a lot of people and as well. So don't let yourself be broken up and put into a state of despair. There are things we can do, and you can find more of my stuff. I've got a YouTube channel. It's called Primal Edge Health. And I haven't edited a video for that for like a year. I've just been doing live streams, try to get a couple in a week. Sometimes I get sick of it. But yeah, as long as I'm allowed on YouTube, I'm going to keep, of course, within the YouTube community guidelines. I'm always well within the guidelines, YouTube. Please don't destroy my channel that I've worked 6 years building. But I'm going to keep talking about this stuff and making titles of my video to where I think I will not get banned. And sarcasm and a little tongue in cheek can be helpful as well when you discuss these things on social media. I'm going to keep doing that. I'm on Instagram as well. Primal Edge Health on Instagram. I'm on the Twitter. For the time being, I've been put on timeout twice in the last few months, so that might change. But I'm Tristan Haggard on Twitter, and we run a private forum as well, and we do weekly coaching calls in there. So we have a little private community where and we haven't even talked about diet very much here, but I do an animal-based diet. And that term, you guys stealing that term from me. You guys talk about animal-based diet now. I was saying this 3 years ago. Our diet, for the people who are wondering, my diet consists of raw dairy from my land and meat. That's my diet. Jessica's is similar, except with basically almost zero dairy. So she's mostly carnivore. I'm carnivore with dairy. Every once in a while I have a piece of fruit. And but we teach people how to get healthy. We help to dial in people's diet and lifestyle, whether they're looking for, fat loss or performance gains or whatnot. And we've got a nice community where we do weekly coaching calls in there, and we run that via a private forum on Discord. So you can always become a member. And And yeah, that's where you can find me, all on the social medias, or if you want to email me as well. If you just, have something you want to talk with me about that's more private, if you want to share something with me, Tristan at primaledgehealth.com. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, once again, Tristan, thanks. And like I said, if you want to have me pop on, I'm always happy to do it. Just shoot me a little message and we'll make that happen. All right, guys. Thanks, everybody. You guys have a great day. I'll see you guys tomorrow for you guys to come on the weekend. And then I think we've got Tim, who do we have? We have Peter Martin coming on Sunday. He is the principal author of the study on the carnivore diet and SIBO, showing that it reversed SIBO 100% of that paper out of Sweden. So that'll be a new topic. Anyway, you guys take care. See you later, Tristan. Bye-bye.